Hi, everyone. As always, or not as always, but as it has been recently, I'm here at home in Los Angeles. Have some fun going on today at home. Our grandchildren are here with us today, Sam and Romy. They're out in the back doing crafts with Grandma. And I don't know if they're like streaming live to watch this, but they're working on something to do with plants and growing plants, which is sort of a fun thing to do. And we just got back from riding bikes and scooters at UCLA, which is right up the street from where we live. So it's been a fun, busy morning. As someone who has never been a parent, and there are many of you out there in the audience who know what that's about, the amount of activity that has to go on in order to keep young ones occupied, energized, and engaged is quite a bit. And Catherine is amazing at it. I am not as strong with all of that, but it's fun to watch them ride their bikes and play. And UCLA is a beautiful setting, and of course, because of what's going on this summer, there are really very few people on campus, so it's a really pretty setting. Anyway, we are going to be continuing on with these happy golden years, picking up with the chapter Almanzo Says Goodbye. And where we left Laura yesterday, where Allison left Laura yesterday is, Laura's at the Brewster School and she's teaching, and it's starting to get really cold. And she engages the young people to bring in more coal and gather around the stove so that they can stay warm and do their lessons. And she recounts that it is going well. The time is good with the kids, which is a nice thing to hear, because up to this point, the teaching has been a bit of a struggle, and of course, her life at the Brewster home is not fun. And I'm sure Allison read with glee yesterday. I did not see it. The event with the knife in the night, which is one of the scarier moments in all of the Little House books. I don't think there are many things that are more unsettling than that moment with Mrs. Brewster. But Laura got through it. And she has finished the school week and she has gone home, and we begin the chapter Almanzo Says Goodbye. That Saturday at home, Ma was worried about Laura. "Are you coming down with something?" she asked. "It isn't like you to sit half asleep." "Well, I feel a little tired. It isn't anything, Ma," Laura said. Pa looked up from his paper. "That Clarence making trouble again?" No, Pa, he's doing splendidly, and they all are as good as they can be." She was not exactly lying, but she could not tell them about Mrs. Brewster and the knife. If they knew, they would not let her go back, and she must finish her school. A teacher could not walk away and leave a term of school unfinished. If she did, she would not deserve another certificate, and no school board would hire her. So she made a greater effort to hide from them her sleeplessness and her dread of going back to Mrs. Brewster's house. There was only one more week. On Sunday afternoon, the weather had moderated. The temperature was only 15 degrees below zero. Imagine that. Only 15 degrees below zero. When Laura and Almanzo set out, there was hardly any wind and the sun shone brightly. Out of the silence, Laura said, "Only one more week, and I'll be so glad when it's over." "Well, maybe you'll miss the sleigh rides," Almanzo suggested. "Oh, this one is nice," Laura said, "but mostly it's so cold. I should think you'd be glad not to drive so far anymore. I don't know why you ever started making these long drives. You didn't need to take them to get home the way I do." Sometimes a fella gets tired of sitting around," Almanzo replied. "Two old bachelors gets pretty dull by themselves." "Why, there's lots of people in town. You and your brother needn't stay by yourselves," Laura said. "Well, there hasn't been anything going on in town since the school exhibition," Almanzo objected. "I mean, all a fellow can do is hang around the saloon and playing pool, or in one of the stores watching checkers players. Sometimes he'd rather be out with with better company, even if it does get cold driving. Laura had not thought of herself as good company. If that was what he wanted, she thought she should make an effort to be more entertaining, but she could not think of anything entertaining to say. She tried to think of something while she watched the sleek brown horses trotting so swiftly. Their dainty feet spurned the snow in perfect rhythm, and their blue shadows flew along the snow beside them. They were so gay, tossing their heads to make a chiming of the bells, pricking their ears forward and back, lifting their noses to the breeze of their speed that rippled on their black manes. Laura drew a deep breath and exclaimed, "Oh, how beautiful!" "What's beautiful?" Almanzo asked. "Oh, the horses, look at them," Laura answered. At that moment, Prince and Lady touched noses as though they whispered to each other. Then together they tried to break into a run. When Almanzo had gently but firmly pulled them into a trot again, he asked, Would you like to drive them?" "Oh," Laura cried. She had to add honestly, "Pa won't let me drive his horses. He says I'm too little and I would get hurt." "Oh, Prince and Lady wouldn't hurt anybody," Almanzo said. "I raised them myself, but if you think they're beautiful, I wish you could have seen the first horse I ever raised, Starlight. I named him for the white star he had on his forehead. His father had given him Starlight as a colt back in New York State when he was 9 years old. This is right out of Farmer Boy. You all remember this. His father had given him Starlight as a colt back in New York State when he was 9 years old. He told Laura all about gentling Starlight and breaking him and what a beautiful horse he was. Starlight had come west to Minnesota. When Almanzo first came out to the western prairies, he had come riding Starlight. Starlight was 9 years old then. And when Almanzo rode him back to Marshall, Minnesota, 105 miles in one day, and Starlight came in so fresh that he tried to race another horse at the journey's end. "Well, where is he now?" Laura asked. He's at pasture on Father's farm back in Minnesota," Almanzo told her. He is not as young as he used to be, and I need a double team for driving out here, so I gave him back to Father." The time had passed so quickly that Laura was surprised to see the Brewsters ahead. She tried to keep her courage, but her heart sank. "What makes you so quiet, so sudden?" Almanzo asked. "Oh, I was wishing that we were going in the other direction," Laura said. "Well, we'll be doing that next Friday." He slowed the horses. "We can delay it a little," he said. And she knew that somehow he understood how she dreaded going into that house. "Till next Friday, then," he smiled encouragingly as he drove away. Day by day and night by night that week went by until there was only one more night to get through. Tomorrow was Friday, the last day of school. When that one night and one day were over, she would go home to stay. She so dreaded that something might happen this last night. Often she woke with a start, but all was quiet, and her heart slowly ceased thumping. Friday's lessons were unusually well learned, and every pupil was carefully well behaved. When afternoon recess was over, Laura called the school to order and said there would be no more lessons. School would be dismissed early because this was the last day. She knew that she must make some closing speech to the school, so she praised them all for the work that they had done. "You have made good use of the opportunity you have had to come to school," she told them. "I hope that each of you can get more schooling, but if you cannot, you can study at home as Lincoln did. An education is worth striving for, and if you cannot have much help in getting one, you can each help yourself to an education if you try." Then she gave Ruby one of her name cards of thin, pale pink cardboard with a spray of roses and cornflowers curving above her printed name. On the back she had written, "Presented to Ruby Brewster by her teacher with kind regards. Brewster School, February 1883. Tommy was next, then Martha and Charles and Clarence. They were all so pleased. Laura let them have a moment to enjoy looking at the pretty cards and carefully placed them in their books for helping me. Hang on. Then she told them to make ready their books, slates, and pencils to carry home. And for the last time, she said, "School is dismissed." She had never been more surprised than she was then, for instead of putting on their wraps as she expected, they all came up to her desk. Martha gave her a beautiful red apple. Ruby shyly gave her a little cake that her mother had baked her for a gift. And Tommy and Charles and Clarence each gave her a new pencil that he had carefully sharpened for her. She hardly knew how to thank them, but Martha said, "It's us. we that thank you, Miss Ingalls. Thank you for helping me with my grammar." "Thank you, Miss Ingalls," Ruby said. "I wish it had frosting on it." The boys did not say anything, but after they had all said goodbye and gone, Clarence came back, standing by Laura's table and leaning against it. He looked down at his cap in his hands and muttered, "I'm sorry, I was so mean." "Why, Clarence, that's all right," Laura exclaimed. "And you have done wonderfully well in your studies. I am very proud of you." He looked at her with his old saucy grin and shot out of the room, slamming the door so that the shanty shook. Laura cleaned the blackboard and swept the floor. She stacked her books and papers and shut the drafts of the stove. Then she put on her hood and coat and stood at the window waiting until the sleigh bells came jingling and Prince and Lady stopped at the door. School was out. She was going home to stay. Her heart was so light that she felt like singing with the sleigh bells, and fast as the horses trotted, they seemed slow. "You won't get there any faster pushing," Almanzo said once, and she laughed aloud to find that she was pushing her feet hard against the cutter's dashboard. But he did not talk much, and neither did she. It was enough to be going home. Not until she thanked him nicely and said good night and was in the sitting room taking off her wrap did she remember that he had not said good night, that he had not said, "I'll see you Sunday afternoon," as he had always said before. He had said goodbye. Of course, she thought it was goodbye. This had been the last sleigh ride. The next chapter is Jingle Bells. Waking next morning was happier than Christmas. "Oh, I am at home," Laura thought, and she called, "Carrie, good morning. Wake up, sleepyhead." She almost laughed with joy as she shivered into her dress and skipped downstairs to button her shoes and comb her hair in the warming kitchen where Ma was getting breakfast. "Good morning, Ma," she sang. "Good morning," Ma smiled. "I declare you look much better already." "Well, it's nice to be home," Laura said. "Now, what shall I do first?" She was busy all that morning helping with Saturday's work. Though usually she disliked the dryness of flour on her hands, today she enjoyed kneading the bread, thinking happily that she would be at home to eat the fresh, brown-crusted loaves. Her heart sang with the song on her lips. She was not going back to the Brewsters ever again. It was a beautifully sunny day, and that afternoon, when the work was all done, Laura hoped that Mary Power would come to visit with her while they crocheted. Ma was gently rocking while she knitted by the sunny window, carrying sleigh bells. For some reason, her heart jumped, but the bells rang thinly as they sped by. There were only a few bells. They were not the rich string of bells that Prince and Lady wore. Their music had not died away when again sleigh bells went tinkling past. Then all up and down the street, the stillness sparkled with the ringing of the little bells. Laura went to the window. she saw Minnie Johnson and Fred Gilbert flash by, then Arthur Johnson with a girl that Laura did not know. And then the full music of the double string of bells came swiftly, and Mary Power and Cap Garland dashed by in a cutter. So that was what Mary was doing. Cap Garland had a cutter and full strings of sleigh bells too. More and more laughing couples drove up and down the street in sleighs and cutters, passing and repassing the window where Laura stood. At last she sat soberly down to her crocheting. The sitting room was neat and quiet. Nobody came to see Laura. She had been gone so long that probably no one thought of her. All that afternoon, the sleigh bells were going by up and down the street. Her schoolmates went laughing in the sunny cold, having such a good time. Again and again, Mary and Cap sped by in a cutter made for two. Well, Laura thought, tomorrow she would see Ida at Sunday school. But Ida did not come to church that Sunday. Mrs. Brown said that she had a bad cold. That Sunday afternoon, the weather was even more beautiful. Again, the sleigh bells were ringing and laughter floating on the wind. Again, Mary Power and Cap went by, and Minnie and Fred and Frank Hawthorne and Mary Bird and all the newcomers who Laura had barely knew, and two by two they went gaily by, laughing and singing with the chiming bells, and no one remembered Laura. She had been away so long that everybody had forgotten her. Soberly, she tried to read Tennyson's poems. She tried not to mind being forgotten and left out. She tried not to hear the sleigh bells and the laughter, but more and more she felt that she could not bear it. Suddenly, a ringing of bells stopped at the door. Before Pa could look up from his paper, Laura had the door open, and there stood Prince and Lady with the little cutter, and Almanzo stood beside it, smiling. "Would you like to go sleigh riding?" he asked. "Oh, yes," Laura answered. "Just a minute. I'll put on my wraps." Quickly, she got into her coat and put on her white hood and mittens. Almanzo tucked her into the cutter, and they sped away. "I didn't know your eyes were so blue," Almanzo said. "It's my white hood," Laura told him. I always wore my dark one to Brewster's." She gave a gasp and laughed aloud. "What's so funny?" Almanzo asked, smiling. "It's a joke on me," Laura said. I didn't intend to go with you anymore, but I forgot. "Why did you come?" "Well, I thought maybe you'd change your mind if you watched the crowd go by," Almanzo answered. And then they laughed together. Theirs was one of the line of sleighs and cutters swiftly going the length of Main Street, swinging in a circle on the prairie to the south, and speeding up Main Street and around in a circle to the north, and back again and again. Far and wide the sunshine sparkled on the snowy land. The wind blew cold against their faces. The sleigh bells were ringing, the sleigh runners squeaking on the hard-packed snow. And Laura was so happy that she had to sing. "Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh." And here they are, riding up and down Main Street in Almanzo's cutter. You can see everyone out. It's like this is like small town cruising. This is what American Graffiti was all about, only with cars, with car culture. But this is what this is all about. In a city of Visalia, they do a thing. Visalia, California is a little farming town in California. They do a thing where they're cruising Mooney Boulevard. I mean, Mooney Boulevard was the big drag. Well, Main Street in De Smet, South Dakota in 1883 was the place that young people went cruising in their cutters. Pretty fun. All along the speeding line, other voices took up the tune. Swinging out on the open prairie and back, fast up the street and out on the prairie and back again, the bells were ringing and the voices singing in the frosty air. jingle bells, jingle all the way. We think it's a Christmas song, but maybe they're close to Christmas, but we think of this as a Christmas song, but it's really a sleighing song. They were not quite safe from blizzards because they did not go far from town. Sorry, they were quite safe from blizzards. Big distinction. They were quite safe from blizzards because they did not go far from town. The wind was blowing, but not too hard, and everyone was so happy and gay, for it was only 20 degrees below zero. Only 20 degrees below zero, and the sun shone. And that's the end of that chapter. Things are, it may have been 20 degrees below zero, but things are clearly starting to warm up for Laura and Almanzo. A very, very sweet and touching. I'm so glad that Allison invited me to come back and read today, and I'll be with you again on Sunday. So Allison will read tomorrow and Saturday, and I will be back reading with you on Sunday at the same time. So, listen, I hope you all have a great day, and this is just a nice little respite in your afternoon to take a little break from whatever it is that you're doing. I'm so glad that you can be here to do this. And I read that Allison made clear that she is in fact going to read the first 4 years. So, well, those of you who know the books know it's going to be quite a different experience, but interesting and instructive based on what the life was. It's not quite as idyllic a telling of Laura's life as maybe the other books are. So, in the meantime, enjoy yourselves, wash your hands, wear your masks, watch your social distancing. It's more important than ever. I don't know how everybody feels about the politics of this, but one would hope it's not a political distinction, but a human distinction. Doing what's right for each other and for those around us that we love and care about, and just those that just are in our community that we want to look out for. And we hope that they're looking out for us as well. All the best. Have a great day, and great time with Allison tomorrow and Saturday. I'll see you Sunday. Take care. Bye-bye.